Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to talk to you about reading slumps. If you're someone who has spent a consistent amount of time reading in your life, you have probably experienced a reading slump, which is when nothing is just really hitting your fancy. Reading feels like pulling teeth, and maybe you want to read, but it's just not working for you. Nothing's working, and it feels like every book you're trying, you should like it, but you're not. And it's such a frustrating feeling to feel stuck in a rut, to want to read, but to be struggling with it. If you've been watching my channel the last couple of months, you will know that I was in a reading slump for the end of January, all of February, and most of March. So I'm just finally coming out of a really intense reading slump, and I had one last year too. Like, this happens to me semi-frequently. There are a couple things that can cause it. Sometimes it can just be that you're struggling, your life is stressful, Sometimes it could be that you read a really amazing book and then you just are really struggling to find another book that measures up. We call that a book hangover here in the bookish world, where other books you're just like, man, I just want to read that book again, that I want to have that same experience again. So there are multiple things that can cause a reading slump, but it's really frustrating when you're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? And so today I wanted to talk to you about reading slumps and give you a few tips and tricks that have helped me bust out of my reading slumps. So the first piece of advice that I'm going to give you is one that I did not take myself, and I think it's why I stayed in a rut for so long, and that is DNF freely. Throw that TBR out the window. If you have plans to read books and none of them are interesting you, just stop reading them. And I did not follow that advice at all. I tend to be very regimented and planned with my reading. I leave a little bit of space for mood reading, but I have, reads that I am planned to read with other people, or, whatever, books that I have planned to read in specific months. And so for the most part, a lot of times I just push through. And sometimes when I'm not feeling a book at the beginning, once I get more into it, I'm enjoying it more, and I'm glad that I stuck with it. But that is not what happens when you're in a reading slump. Usually you're just like, man, this is the wrong time to read this book. So don't be like me. DNF freely. Another tip is to try a chapter of a book or multiple books. If you're not sure what you're in the mood for, if you're like, this book looks good, this book looks good, book looks good, maybe you go to the library and you pick up a whole bunch of books and just try a chapter of each one of those books and see which one kind of grabs you, pulls you in, makes you want to read more. And it's a good way to get kind of a little bite-sized taste of the reading style, of an introduction to the plot. And so I think that trying a chapter is a great way to try to find a new book that is actually interesting you. Something that really helps me, sometimes I get slumpy and I'm in the middle of a big book and it feels like I'm not making any progress and I'm stuck in the middle of this big book. So something that really helps me is to read shorter books. So sometimes that could mean reading a fast-paced short book. Like, for example, last year I read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a retelling, a fantasy kind of retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. It's pretty short, it's under 200 pages long, it's pretty fast-paced, you have no idea what's going on, it's really creepy, and so that is a really good example of that. But Agatha Christie is another good one where her books move very quickly, they're not very long, they're very plot-driven, so you're kind of sucked into what is going on here. And I think trying a faster-paced book can help suck you in faster, because if you know me, you know that I love classic literature, but most classic books take a while to get going. And the same can be true of literary fiction. Sometimes that's true of historical fiction. There are a lot of genres that can take a little while to find their footing. And when you're already feeling slumpy, it can be difficult to push yourself through and try to get to the point where the plot is actually getting interesting and is gripping you. So if you're looking for something that is faster paced, that might help you out. If you're looking for short books as well, another really helpful thing is to pick up a middle grade. And the great thing about middle grade is, first of all, they're really short. Second of all, the prose is rather, simplistic, even though there are definitely middle grades that have more lovely prose than others. It's like, that's not going to be an issue for you. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to struggle to like get into an author's writing style as much with a middle grade. But another great thing about middle grade is that middle grade is not a genre, it's an age category. So there are so many genres that you could choose within this. One of my favorite contemporary middle grades that I've read over the past couple of years is The Labors of Hercules Beale by Gary D. Schmidt, which is about a boy who is experiencing loss and grief and starting over in a new school. It has some really great callbacks to Greek literature, as the main character's name is Hercules, and his teacher assigns him to recreate the 12 labors of Hercules in his day-to-day life and write about his reflections in that. And it is just excellent. It made me laugh. It made me cry. That's a great contemporary. There are lots of middle grade sci-fi and fantasy. One that my daughter reads over and over again that I really love is The Last Mapmaker by Christina Soontornvat, which is based very heavily in like class systems that are really interesting, but also it's based in like Thai culture. And so that makes it like feel really unique and fresh. There's also lots of historical fiction within middle grade, and I tend to prefer middle grade historical fiction a lot of times to adult historical fiction. One that I finished recently that was actually a reread is Breaking Stalin's Nose by Eugene Yelchin, which is about a boy who is growing up in the Stalinist regime and is about to become a member of the Young Pioneers. His dad works for Stalin, and so it's really interesting to watch this boy's like brainwashed mentality at the beginning of the book as he slowly becomes awakened to maybe this isn't as idealistic of a society as he thought it was. Another thing that can help with shorter books is to read a short story collection, or maybe not even the whole collection. Pick up a collection of short stories and read one or two, and you'll feel like you have gotten through an entire story, but it's been brief. I find that feeling like you're making progress can actually help you get back on the bandwagon, so to speak. And actually, two books that have really helped me when I have been in slumps last year and this year. Last year I read My Antonia by Willa Cather, which is very short. It is really slow paced, so that might not work for everyone, but it's set in the countryside in Nebraska. It's just very beautifully written, and so that really pulled me out of my slump last year. While I was slumpy this year, this didn't pull me out of my slump, so to speak, because I went right back into a slump right after I finished it. But in an afternoon, I read Foster by Claire Keegan. I was able to read it in one sitting. It was beautiful, heart-wrenching. I cried. Like, I loved it so much, and I will not stop talking about Claire Keegan because I read 2 of her novellas within the last few months, and I just can't stop talking about her. So reading a novella or a really short work is really helpful to kind of get back into the reading groove. Another thing that can really help is to read a book by an author that you love. You've already read something by them and you've really enjoyed it and you want to read more by them. So look at books that you have read. If like you're on Goodreads, you can click on your 5 stars and try to see like what is going on with that. Like maybe even look for some commonality within your 5-star reads to see like what kind of books are usually 5 stars for me. And so that can be helpful to kind of analyze your reading a little bit. I actually did a video about that to figure out what books have been 5 stars for me the last couple of years. And that might shift over time as your reading tastes change or the season of life that you're in changes. Sometimes you're more in the mood for something than something else, but that can kind of help you like see if like maybe there's a specific genre or a specific type of book or a specific author that has consistently put out books that you really enjoy. And that is actually what just busted me out of my recent slump, is that I read Adam Bede by George Eliot. I haven't even done a wrap up with this yet because I read it beginning of April. Well, I finished at the beginning of April. I started at the end of March. And so because I haven't even finished April, I haven't talked about it a ton on my channel yet, But man, like I love George Eliot, and Daniel Deronda was one of my favorite books of the year last year. So to pick up Adam Bede was to read a book by an author that was one of my favorites last year, and it busted me out of that slump. And all I wanted to do was sit and read Adam Bede and shirk all my responsibilities and just read. And that was exactly what I needed to pull me out of my reading slump. On the same vein, you could try rereading a book that you've loved in the past. That can be so helpful. And books that I've really enjoyed reading, even when I was feeling slumpy, was I've been rereading the Anne of Green Gables books this year. And those are just so comforting and so delightful. And there can be something so wonderful about rereading a book, especially if maybe the reason you're feeling slumpy is because you're living in a stressful time period in your life, or there are things going on, or there's uncertainty. Being able to reread a book that you love is so comforting and not stressful because you already know what's going to happen in the book. You know, you're not feeling any sort of like anxiety of like, oh my gosh, am I going to enjoy this book and then the end is just going to completely blow it for me. You won't feel that way because you've already read it and you know that you love it. So that is something that can be really helpful. I have two conflicting pieces of advice that might help you. One is to read something that is comforting to you. So in a genre that is typically a comfort read. So for some people that could be like a cozy mystery, or it could be a sweet romance, or it could be something that, I don't know, like a comfort read for me is I love All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. And maybe this is not a traditional comfort read, I don't know. But there's something about the small town vibes and the setting and the animals and the funny stories mixed with heartwarming stories that just gets me every single time. On the flip side, and this can tie into the try a chapter as well, try reading something that's completely outside your wheelhouse. Something that you're like, oh, I've never read a book like this before. Trying something new can kind of like break your brain out of kind of like the rut that it's in. And a book that did that for me recently that I keep talking about is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And I don't know that I necessarily recommend this to people because it's a really weird book. Like it's sci-fi / horror / maybe some speculative fiction elements thrown in there as well. And it is so not the normal kind of book that I read. It's so weird and you don't really get very good answers of what's going on in this book, but yet I was absolutely like consumed and had to figure out what was going on and had to read more. So sometimes reading something that you're like, this is not my kind of book, might actually snap you out of it and be like, whoa, this was so unexpected. The last suggestion that I have for you is to try reading differently, to kind of look at things in a different format. If you are someone that you always sit down to physically read, you could try physically reading along with listening to an audiobook, which is typically referred to as immersion reading in the booktube world. You could try that because that might actually really help you to focus. Like if you're sitting down and you're like, your mind is wandering and you're just having a hard time, having auditory and visual input at the same time can really help you. Or if you're someone that you always sit down to read, try putting on an audiobook and going for a walk. That can really help. If you're someone that you always listen to audio or you're always read on your Kindle, try reading physically. The act of actually turning a page and seeing the progress that you're making in a book might help as well. So sometimes mixing up the format or the time that you read. If you always read in the morning, try reading in the evening, try reading on your lunch break at work, or, whatever. Try reading at different times or in different ways and see if that helps mix things up for you and put you back on the path of reading more consistently again. Well, those are some tips of things that have previously helped me. I hope they are helpful to you if you have been struggling with a slump as well. If you have any books that you have read that have helped you go from I don't want to read to oh my gosh, I need to read this, I'm consumed by this, please leave those in the comments down below, because having some recommendations of specific books that have busted people out of slumps might be a really helpful resource for people as well. And if you have any tips of things that have helped you that I did not mention in this video, please leave those as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.